Roots of the Science podcast with your girl, Anne with an E.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Root of the Science podcast with your girl, Anne with an E. Now, if you're new here, it's always such a pleasure. So welcome. And if you're a regular, thank you so much for returning and tuning in. A reminder that you can listen to the latest podcast on all your favorite streaming platforms such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, or wherever else. Make sure that with Apple Podcast or Spotify, even YouTube, you switch on the notifications so that you are aware when a new episode loads. A reminder that we're also available on various social media platforms such as Twitter and Instagram at the Root of the Sci Pod, or you can follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook at the Root of the Science podcast. And of course, also, like I mentioned earlier, we are on YouTube and TikTok at the Root of the Sci pod. A reminder that if you think I should chat to you, send me a message on one of the following social media platforms, or send me an email directly if there's somebody who you think I should chat to, or if you'd love for us to collaborate on a project at rootofthescipod@gmail.com, and we can definitely get in touch. A reminder that you can support the show by clicking the support the show link in the show notes, and you can contribute to helping the show continue. Thank you so much. Let's get into today's episode. My guest today is Talita Turvey, born and bred in South Africa. Talita describes herself as a scientist, musician, and a full-time worker. In this episode, she talks about all of these facets of her life, such as her music career, and she tells us about the song that she released, and you can find the link to that in the show notes. She also then talks to us about the root of her science, and the story of why she got into the science, and her current research for her master's in plant sciences that focuses on melanoma, which is a skin cancer, and whether two types of isolated compounds from a plant could be used as a potential drug candidate to treat this melanoma. She also tells us more about juggling work, life, and school. Tune in to hear about all of this and, of course, so much more. Let's go. Hi, Talita. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Anne. Thank you so much for having me.
It is such a pleasure to talk to you on this lovely Sunday afternoon. I'm so excited for everybody to get to know you and to hear more about your story. So first things first, who is Talita? Where are you from? And just briefly introduce yourself.
Okay. I'm Talita Turvey, and I am originally born in Middelburg, Mpumalanga, but I basically grew up in Pretoria. So I see myself as a scientist / musician / full-time worker as well.
Yeah. Let's start from the beginning. Okay, we all know why you are here, because you are a scientist, but away from the science, you mentioned that you are a musician. Oh my goodness, that is so cool. And in fact, you've told me that you've actually released music, which is even cooler. Yes. So can you please tell us more about this aspect of your life and why it's so important, this area is so important to you away from just being a scientist?
So I actually music. It has always been my first love. And that was the one thing that I always spent the most time on in school, primary school, high school, throughout university, basically, as well. And all of my spare time went into music. So I didn't really do any sports or anything other than that. And I initially thought that I would become a full-time musician and go study music. But then my parents, and well, I also decided that I'm scared that it would take the passion out of the music if I went to, to go study it full time. And yeah, then in my first year of starting to study, my parents, they told me maybe you should just also have a plan B, something else that you can fall back on when the music doesn't work or whatever. And then the only other option for me was science. So then I started doing my undergrad in microbiology. And in that year, somehow a producer found one of my songs that I recorded for a competition in grade 10 on SoundCloud.
Oh, wow.
And,
okay.
Yeah, and then he said, no, let's just meet up. And he really wants to help me to maybe, start to get signed by record labels. And then when we met, we started writing songs together and everything. And we wrote this one song that I now released. And that was 8 years ago now. And yeah, and from there, because initially he wanted me to then send these songs to record labels and everything. And once he got to know me better, he said, no, let's just keep on working together, because if you're going to go to a record label now, they are going to rip you to shreds. And he didn't want that for me then, because I was still learning, still very new to the music world, and writing especially. So then we just worked together for 5-6 years. And 2 years ago, this is also why my master's has been extended for so long, one of the reasons. In just after the pandemic was very bad, after lockdown and everything started opening up a bit more, we started writing, and during lockdown actually I started writing a full album. And and we started recording, and then the song was the first song that we decided that we wanted to release. And I also have 2 other songs ready, but that's also a process. But yeah, this is the problem with my life, is that I try to focus on too many things at once, and then it feels like that classic jack of all trades, master of none. So it's been a bit of a journey, and it's very frustrating to know that I have 12 songs written and ready. I just need the time to go and record and do all of the production and everything like that. So that is my biggest dream. So I'm very grateful and happy that I could get the chance to actually release one of my songs. It is in Afrikaans, and it is available on all the platforms you can think of. So that is my story about the song.
What is it called? You've told us about this song. Okay, you said it's in Afrikaans, but of course you can say the name and then translate it for us. And then now I'm just gonna ask you, is there a backstory or whatnot? This is not even becoming science podcast anymore. It's becoming a music podcast. But what is it called?
Okay, so the song's name is Ek Beloof, and that just translated is I Promise in English. And the backstory was that it was the first song we ever wrote together. And it was just sort of for him, because I wasn't convinced. I really wanted to sing in English. And then he said, no, let's just write one song together in Afrikaans, and you can decide after that. And we just kind of improvised. It was very chilled. And we ended up with something really special that we both really liked. And it's changed a lot over the last 6 years. So when I started writing my whole album now, we kind of rewrote the song again, and that led to the song we have now. So one of my main goals when writing songs is to create a picture, or almost like a little movie that you can see inside of your head, to create, allow the listener to see everything that I'm saying almost. And so yeah, we just rewrote that, but that song basically convinced me to, write all my songs in Afrikaans. And another funny story is that when we just wrote the song, they have a lot of connections to like big Afrikaans artists and stuff. And one artist wanted to buy the song actually for a kind of a lot of money.
Oh, wow.
And we were like, no, we will keep this song for ourselves. Yeah. So that's how much it means to us. We also didn't want to sell it. I don't know. It just started everything for me, I guess. So yeah, it's still a pipeline dream, but it started at least. Yeah.
No, I love that. And also just the title, I promise. And I think maybe it's a promise to yourself for the future that this is something that you can do. And this is because you said it's your lifelong dream. So it's like maybe the start of your promise that you're actually going to do this. And, that saying of like, what is that saying, that a jack of all trades or a master of none? Yeah. I think it's a bit convoluted personally. Hey, everyone has their opinion. Okay. But I think we are allowed to have a lot of trades. We can be a lot, and we don't need to be a master in all of it. And I think sometimes that's where we sort of limit ourselves because we think we have to be great at every single thing.
That's very
so
true.
For me personally, I love that. I think you should, because you're a human, you're complex. There's so many areas to you, and you're not just a scientist or you're not just a musician. So I think you should own it. You should own your multiple trades. And that goes to everybody else who's listening, because I am also I'm a jack of a lot of trades. And I think one of the things that I've learned is to kind of let go and try and be a master at everything. I don't have to be. I can just be good at it. Yeah. And then I can, then my life sort of proceeds. So I think you're on a really good track, Talita, and it's so exciting. We're going to link your song.
Thank you.
Onto the show notes. So if somebody's like listening and they're like, okay, oh my goodness, let me hear the song. We're going to link it. So yeah, no, that's pretty exciting. I'm so excited. And what a wonderful journey of you as just a human and, away from you being a scientist. So you mentioned earlier, Talita, that music has always been your first thing when you were explaining your introduction. So I'm curious, where did the science spark come from? Like, what is your story? How did that come? Like, did you always know that this is something that you wanted to do? I know you said that it was sort of like a plan B, but like, where did the bug start, and why did you get into science?
So I think subconsciously, maybe I've always been interested in science because I have this very deep urge to understand everything around me. And my mom told me a story of me like 3 years old or something, and I really wanted to know if ants would like get a fright if I screamed at them. So I think I've been
oh my goodness.
They didn't. They just continued
they didn't.
walking. But I think like that just explains to me at least that like I've always wanted to know why things are the way that they are. And science, biology, microbiology has always also been something very close to my heart. I love tiny things so much, and and cells and microbes and fungi, all of that. Like I've always been very interested in like all of nature. So I think I don't know if that even answers your question, but I've just always been a very curious person. And science gives you a way to understand everything around you, like it explains all of the intricacies.
A lot.
Yeah. So
yeah, no, I think it's a wonderful answer, because most scientists, we always have, what is it? The hypothesis, what we think, or a question rather, and then we're trying to prove it or answer it or disprove it. So that's a beautiful beginning? So you said for you it was always the microbiology or the small things and whatnot.
Yeah.
So take me through on your academic journey. How did that go apart? Where did you study after you finished high school? Just run me through that journey.
Okay. I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to study, so I just kind of went with biochemistry at first, actually. That was my first year. And then when I realized I really don't like biochemistry, I changed to I changed to microbiology. And my plan was, it was a wild roller coaster for me, honestly, because I just changed everything the whole time. But yeah, so I wanted to initially do a double major with microbiology and genetics. And then I found that I really liked plants. So I went to go talk to someone and they were like, oh no, you don't have to do a double major. You can just say that you do applied microbiology, and then you can select any elective modules you want as long as you meet the credits, that you have to have for the year. So then I ended up picking like a lot of different botany related modules, and one of them was medicinal plant science. And because of that, there was one class where a professor, Prof. Namri Dalal, my now supervisor, came to talk to us. And she was like, you can do honors. All you basically need is to have a certain percentage in this one module. And I could see all of my friends really struggling because it was so competitive in all of the other honors. And it just kind of felt like this honors found me. And then in my last year of undergrad, I started getting like lab training for my honors in the middle of the year already. So I was very privileged to have that on my side, so that I actually I didn't really do that well in undergrad, to be honest. And
same.
Undergrad was horrible for me. I didn't like it at all. But so because of the training I received and everything, they could argue that I really wanted to do my honors and that I would, do my best and everything. So I did make the percentage that they needed me to make, but it was like really close. So they needed to kind of fight for me to get into the program. And then in my honors, I've always had a really great surrounding, like my supervisor, my co-supervisor, my friends, everyone in that department. I think Kaylin's also been on this podcast actually. And
yes, he's the one who introduced me to you.
Yes. So we did our honors together, and I think the community in our department was really great. So that helped a lot. In my honors year, that was when my real love for cell culture began, and I kind of developed this very natural affinity, or I don't know, I just figured it out really quickly. It felt like I was made to do it. I don't know if you felt like that in the lab before.
Yeah.
So it was really nice for the first time, I felt like ever, to actually be really good at something. And that's when science just became my plan A, maybe, I think. I'm still not sure, but I really love it. And then, so my honors was in medicinal plant science, and then my master's continued on also medicinal plant science. So my honors was on cycads, horrible plants to work with, so very prickly and hard to collect and everything.
Yeah.
But anyway. And the cancer part of it remained. So my master's, my co-supervisor did her PhD project on this one specific plant, and she found that it was very effective and everything on melanoma. And then she kind of asked me if I could help her take it further with my master's project. And that is how we developed my project together, basically. So, it's been a really fun process. It's been very challenging because I'm doing a lot of methods that no one else has done in our lab before. So I had to figure out a lot without any help. And so that's my whole journey, basically.
No, thank you so much for sharing about your journey, and also admitting that it wasn't smooth, and admitting that, to get where you are, there had to be people to fight or motivate, and also talking about the things about how you said that you worked in the lab to gain more skill, and that actually equipped you to get into your honors program. And I think that's also very important to people who are at undergraduate level, to understand that there are some skills that you have to go out and learn. Yeah. You cannot just sit on your laurels and just think higher marks will get you there, which they will, but it's important, maybe rather, let's say, if high marks are not where it's at, maybe differentiate yourself by attaching yourself to a postgrad, or finding a lecturer or supervisor or somebody to help and assist. And that kind of gets you on people's radar for the future. And it shows a bit of an enthusiasm and initiative, which later on becomes beneficial for you in the future. So I think those are very important topics that you spoke of, and it's pretty exciting that it's actually got you to where you are now. You mentioned that in your master's, it's a continuation on somebody else, on your supervisor's PhD, and you said it's got some pretty complicated topics. I mean, methods rather. So you said that it focuses on melanoma, which is a cancer, and whether two isolated compounds from a plant could be a potential drug candidate for this melanoma. So tell us more about this work, and why is it so important?
Okay. So I think it's very obvious for everyone who lives in South Africa that we have very biodiverse plant, the amount of plant species that we have in South Africa is really unheard of almost in the rest of the world. Obviously, not everywhere, but most of the world. And especially because of our traditional medicine knowledge that's been built up over years and years and years. There's so much knowledge that on plants specifically, that can be utilized to, develop certain drugs that can help us in the long run. And this is really our focus for our group specifically. So we kind of look at what traditional healers use for certain diseases. And because my project is on melanoma, we focus on plants that's used for ulcers or skin conditions or anything like that related to the skin. And then we do further analysis, on cytotoxicity. Or then our focus is to find out whether the plants that they use in traditional medicine would also be viable when it's tested in the lab against these various diseases. So for my project specifically, because my co-supervisor also already did her whole PhD study on this plant, we kind of knew going into it that it would have, good activity and everything. But specifically the two isolated compounds, and to try to upscale that from the isolation of those two compounds from the plant was kind of one of our main goals, so that could maybe be commercialized one day, if this is a good potential drug candidate. And then, so I'm not sure how familiar you are with cell culture techniques, anything like that.
No, I'm not.
But okay, so
I'm not.
the conventional way to kind of determine whether a compound or a drug or whatever is a good candidate for further clinical trials or all of that is to use a 2D cell culture model. So this is basically just a single layer of cells grown in a flask in an incubator of the melanoma cancer cell lines. And then you transfer those cells into 96 well plates. And then after a certain, like 24 hours, the specific compounds or the plant extract is then added to this plate of the 96 well plate of the cells. And then after 72 hours, you can then see whether the cells have died or if they're still alive or, and there's also like a certain gradient of the concentration of the compound or the plant extract, so that it goes from, I'm not sure what the beginning concentration is now, sorry, but it goes from a certain concentration to 400 micrograms per milliliter. And that's the highest concentration then. And then you can basically determine what the IC50 of this compound or plant extract is, and that will then tell you whether it is toxic enough to, actually kill the cancer cells within a body. And something important to also know is that there is, they call it SI or selectivity index. Yes. And that is important because it should be like a drug for cancer should obviously be very toxic so that the cancer cells can die, but it shouldn't be as toxic for normal cells within your body, so that the selectivity index should be, it's very important to determine whether this is a good drug or not, because if it is also very toxic for normal cell lines, this means that it will basically attack all of the cells, obviously, within your body, or damage all of the cells, sorry. So that is the conventional way, and that's what she did to determine whether this was toxic enough or not. And after that, the next step before like animal models, and me and my co-supervisor, we're both very against animal models, just because, like, I won't protest it or anything, but I don't want to do it myself, and I feel I can't deal with the cruelty of it. So the step before that is to create a 3D cell culture model. And this was where the challenging part came in. So our cell culture labs never attempted to do 3D cell culture before, and 3D cell culture is really picking up now. It's something that everyone should be moving towards, that does cell culture. It's really the future. And the reason is that it is much more, it's a much more accurate representation of what happens within the body. So a spheroid is then basically like a mini tumor, really small. Yeah. But you can see it with your bare eyes. And it also has like the hypoxic core and different layers of cells. So the outside layer is proliferating cells, and then as it goes inward, there's different types of cells. Where in a 2D cell culture model, it's just proliferating cells. So it's a more accurate model of how a tumor would react in a body, but obviously not exactly the same. But at least you'll know a bit more whether the drug will affect the cells or not in a tumor itself. So I had to then figure out a way or try all of the different methods, because there's a lot of different methods. And obviously you always try to do it in the most cost-effective way possible. So there's a lot of MacGyvering in 3D cell culture, I've realized, even with people that really know what they're doing. So I had to improvise a lot and think outside of the box. And it took me a really long time to develop a method. And I ended up using the method that was like the oldest method used for 3D cell culture, and it's called the it's called the hanging drop method. So basically, you pipette like small little drops of 25 microliters and 250 cells per drop onto a petri dish, and then you turn it over very quickly. And then the fact that the cells can't attach to anything, they eventually attach to each other, and that allows them to develop an extracellular matrix, and then, you know, everything that a spheroid is that I just explained. So yeah, that's a whole process. I won't go into too much detail, but I had to like cut the tips, you know, so that it's big enough to not break the spheroids up. And I've learned so much. So I'm really grateful for that whole process. And that's also, I think, where you develop your skills as a scientist the most, because I think that really is what science is, you know, like figuring it out and figuring new things, like new methods out, and adjusting, optimizing, doing your best to just get the result you want, you know. And the reason that it's so important is because, as we all know, cancer is a very big part of the world, and it's very difficult to find a cure. I'm not sure if we'll ever find like one cure for all of the different types of cancers, because it has so many different ways of like being activated, or there's so many different like things at play at once, you know, like genetics, environments, your health habits, everything. So it's very multidimensional, and if we could find something that can help and has less toxic side effects, that would be great. So that is why I think my research is really important. But it is a long process, and it is something that will still have many, many years of research involved with it. So, but I'm grateful to be part of it for a little while. So, yeah. I don't know if that was too much detail.
Exciting. And No. I think I like how you gave us a background, because, you know, many of us don't know this area of study. And, well, you're absolutely correct that cancer is something that affects everyone all over the world. And it's kind of obvious nowadays with what you said about the environment and our health, etc. It's becoming more and more prevalent. So your work is extremely, extremely important. I just wanted to clarify something. So with this type of research that you're doing, this compound, it's not specific to, like, I don't know, pancreatic cancer, whatever. It's just a cancer. I don't know if that's like when you speak on that, I don't know, like, because I know it's like grouped differently. So are you targeting a particular type of cancer, or?
I am targeting skin cancer.
Skin cancer. Okay.
So that this is also because this plant was most effective against skin cancer specifically. So and we also try to we're trying to figure out exactly what the mechanism of action is. There's also a part of my project that what I still need to do actually, where I want to target a specific protein that is related to the metastasis, and which is basically how quickly cancer spreads to other organs. And because your skin is very the largest organ you have, metastasis is very common, you know, with skin cancer. So that is.
Fantastic work, Talita. This is so exciting. I wish you all of the best. It's honestly, it sounds very groundbreaking and, you know, exciting and novel. And I think that's why it's difficult. So it sucks to be the one who has to figure things out first. But Yeah, you're gonna get there. You're gonna get there, and it's gonna be all worth it. And I'm so excited to hear the type of results that you'll get from this work. You're gonna smash it. I promise. It's gonna end.
Thank you so much.
I remember that was one of the things that I loved. One of the pieces of advice when I was doing my masters. I hated everybody telling me it's gonna be okay because it wasn't feeling okay. But somebody said to me, it's gonna end, and that was the most it was just like the best thing to hear, because it felt like it wasn't, and they were like, don't worry, Anne, it's gonna end, it's gonna end. And that's what kept on comforting me, like this thing has to end eventually. Like, so it's gonna end. It's gonna end, because sometimes it doesn't feel like it is. You just feel like you're never ending whole. So it's definitely gonna end. Okay, so also in the beginning you mentioned that, you know, we spoke about you being a jack of all trades. So apart from you being a musician, apart from you being this amazing rock ass scientist trying to combat cancer, you also working. Girl, you do a lot.
I don't know why I'm doing this to myself.
Okay, you're a sales rep. Which field are you in?
Science. So that's great.
Oh, okay, wait. So it's a nice balance. Okay, so how do you manage or not manage working, studying, and everything? Like, how do you find that balance, if any?
It's very difficult, I'm not going to lie. Especially because last year was my first year of working ever full time in like a corporate, like, you know, actual job. And it was very hard for me to adjust. It was very difficult. And that's also why, you know, my master's kept on extending, because I really felt like I had to find my feet with the job first. But now I feel more comfortable, and I feel like I've found my feet. So I feel like I've decided that I should just focus on two things, you know, like finishing, doing everything I need to do for work, and then finishing this article that I'm writing, or doing this experiment, or doing that, you know, like not thinking about everything, but just kind of taking it one step at a time.
Yeah, smart.
Yes. And I've also realized you really need to give yourself grace, because life can be a lot, and it doesn't help to make yourself feel horrible when you don't reach like certain goals, especially when there's so much going on the whole time. So I do set deadlines, but I really do have a lot of grace with myself. So if I don't make it, I will try my best to, you know, work hard and do everything. But if I need a break, I also need to take it, you know, because I think someone once told me that you can only cut wood. It makes more sense in Afrikaans, I'm sorry, but you can only be as efficient for, you know, a certain period of time, and then you have to rest, or, you know, resharpen your knife, and then go back, your axe, that's actually, sorry, and then go back and, you know, continue doing what you're doing. So I think resting, taking breaks, not overworking yourself, that's a very important part about staying sane. And also having fun. I mean, like, you can't lock yourself away and just write, and then work through the week and do nothing fun either. And it needs to be sustainable, especially for your mental health, you know, like, I'm someone that, I can quickly get caught in like a weird cycle of watching, because I don't know if other people are like this, but I really need to watch like Parks and Recreation or The Office or something while I'm writing sometimes, because I get bored just writing. I don't know why. It's very weird. But once that happens and I'm stuck in this loop of just watching the same show over and over and over and just writing the whole time, it can become kind of like a trap, for you to fall into like a weird dip or something, you know. So, or for me at least, I don't know. So yeah, I really try to prioritize my mental health first, and then just do my best. And yeah, I mean, like you said, we're just people, and we should just do the best we can, and we don't have to be perfect in everything. So yeah. And I think also for us as scientists, I don't know, I've spoken to a lot of my friends who also do science. I think we sometimes want everything to just be perfect. And I think we're quite perfectionistic most of the time. And that is something that you really need to let go, because life isn't perfect and science isn't perfect. Nothing is perfect. Nature is chaos.
Nothing. Yeah.
So yeah, that is something that I need to remind myself of, like, on a daily basis, you know, and that's also something that I feel like I've only learned in like the last year. So
I was actually going to say that, you know, with everything that you're saying about learning, about grace and giving and learning that things are not perfect, it obviously comes with time, and it comes with messing up. It comes with you not handling your mental health. It comes with failing at managing your research. Like, all of this stuff comes, you know, all of these lessons come with failures. And I think it's a very tough pill to swallow, that, you know, with life, that's how you learn, and that's how you sort of re-navigate and reshape. That if everything was perfect, we would never learn. There would be absolutely nothing to learn, because how else would you... Why would you want to change something that's, you know, if it's broken, don't fix it. But because things break, and they do, you have to find ways to be like, okay, how can I do this better? And it always reminds me of, you know, that graph where it shows expectation versus reality of like a postgraduate journey, where the expectation is this like straight graph. And, you know, because we're scientists, we're very quantitative, and we want things to have what's that thing, like, we want things to be straight, and we want things that make sense. But in reality, life has got so many loops, ups and downs, and you sit in this down, and be it from mental health issues, or be it from like relational issues, be it from a lot. And and it honestly just sucks. But I think it sucks. Okay, rather, I think what I wanted to say, that it sucks that you have to learn it like after a lesson. And as much as you can tell someone like, oh no, this is, you have to give yourself grace, you won't give yourself grace until like things have hit the fan. Like you have to go through it yourself. And I hate that, but I mean, that's just how life that's just how life is. Because I always go like,
that's the only way you can grow.
Because I feel like we don't get told enough. Like we don't get told how difficult postgraduate journey is. Or maybe we try, but you just can never experience it until you experience it. So I hear you. I honestly hear you. And I just wanted to just further ask, like, with your reality versus expectation of, let's say, your academic journey or your master's, you mentioned that it's kind of taken you longer than you would have expected, right? So apart from grace, how else do you do it? How else do you go? Like, how do you tell yourself, like, okay, let me continue, instead of just like giving up and being like, clearly I'm not cut out for this, you know? Because a lot of us suffer from that a lot, where the imposter syndrome is like, oh my goodness, all my friends are finishing, I'm still here, you know, I'm behind.
That's so much anxiety.
So how do you tell yourself, you know what, girl, get up? Is it...
I don't really know, honestly. I think it's like, people also ask me this a lot, and I don't really have an answer. I just really love working in the lab, and like a small part of me like just wants to carry on doing my master's forever, because I just really love it. Even though it is stressful, there's also, I don't know, it's like also now having a full-time job where I don't get to be in the lab every day, I really appreciate being able to go back and, you know, be in the science world again, like fully, you know. But it is, and I think also what really helps me is to not focus. My co-supervisor tells me this a lot when I get really stressed, because I get a lot of anxiety regarding this. Oh wait, I do have one tool that helped me a lot. Sorry, let me backtrack. I'm sorry, very ADD brain.
Yes.
But so first of all is to focus on one thing, like I said, you know, like not to think about everything that you still have to do. Like think about what's the next step that you need to take. Do one thing a day. You know, if you analyze one thing a day, just do that. Or if you write one paragraph, do that. So like to set small little goals for yourself that you feel like at least you are making that and you're making progress, even if it's not like huge. And then another thing is, I think when I started working, I realized that, and this might be a bit controversial, I don't know, but I realized that there's such a big world out there and there's so many important things, and not that this isn't important. It is important. It's very important. You know, there's so much time and effort and everything, but it's also not everything. Like I won't die if my project's not the most perfect that it could be, you know. So to just realize that it is a master's project and it'll be okay if it's not everything I hoped it would be, you know. At least you did it. You were there, you showed up, and you did the best that you could. And you learned a lot about yourself. I think postgrad is like, it's very challenging, and that helps you to really find yourself. So I'm really grateful for my journey, you know, in science. I think it's very empowering almost. So yeah, sorry, I don't feel like there's a lot of tools in there, but for me, it's been easy for me to keep going with things that I really love, you know.
You've mentioned a lot of actually important things. So the first thing that you said was focus on one thing. I think sometimes with anxiety and overthinking and pressure, it makes you think of the final step instead of the next step. So you get so overwhelmed that you aren't at step 10. But before you get to 10, you need to do step 2, because 10 will never happen without step 2, you know? So sometimes with anxiety, you get so hyper focused on one end goal that you forget that there are other small little things. And that's really, really important, that in any research journey, be it master's or PhD or anything in life, sometimes you kind of just need to do the next thing first, not the end thing. So that's very, very important. And another thing that I loved, I know you said it's controversial, but I think it's fact. As scientists, sometimes we are so laser focused in our own world, and we forget that there's another whole world of people doing things, of things that are happening. And, you know, and it's important to kind of step out from it. I know for me, it was a lesson where I learned from a friend of mine who's in economics, and because they had to do a project, was it an undergrad or postgrad? I can't remember, but he was doing an economics degree, and they had to do some agriculture economics aspect. And he's like to me, Anne, your people, because we have a whole campus of agriculture and life sciences and in my varsity, and he's like, I've just noticed something. Like, people here are just so focused on one thing. But do you understand what is going on in the world? Do you understand that science doesn't run the world? Politics does. Do you even know what's going on in politics? Like, it was something which is so dumb, but it just made me go like, wait. He's like, do you understand, like, money runs the world? Like, for you to do your research, like, politicians need to do things, like, people in power need to do things. But he's like to me, sometimes scientists, you guys are just so in your head about your research. And it really, from then on, it really kind of challenged me. Sometimes I fall into the trap. I'm not saying I'm perfect, but it really challenges me also that like you kind of need to, when you move away from it, and it sometimes happens when you get a job and you're away from the university setting or the lab setting or the field setting, and then you realize like, whoa, wait a minute, there's like a whole different world, there's a whole different environment, and that puts a lot of perspective that I thought this was the end. And, you know, like a lot of people are failing, but wait, they failed so many times, but they still end up successful.
Yeah.
So I can be successful even though I failed, you know, like there's small little things that you kind of have to like speak to yourself away from removing from that situation. So I firmly agree with you. And I think sometimes we kind of just need to, it's important to kind of step out from our laser focus and just look at what's going on in the world. And it's I love that, you know, your work has allowed you to kind of have another mirror, and I think it will also make you an even better scientist because you kind of see how the world works and you can apply that into your own research and just an overall better human being, I think.
Yeah. No, thank you, Anne.
Yeah. No, you're welcome.
Great.
You're welcome. Talita, it's been so amazing chatting with you and just hearing your story. I absolutely loved hearing your journey. Thank you so much for being honest, and I wish you all of the best again in your research and the music. Where can people follow you? How can they find you, etc.?
Okay. First of all, thank you so much for having me. And it's been really great talking to you as well. Like, I feel like I could just carry on talking with you forever. So thank you for making it so easy.
Oh, you're welcome.
And then I think Instagram would probably be the best. So my Instagram handle is Talita_Turvey. And if you don't have Instagram, then Facebook. Just also, again, my name and surname. And yeah, that's about it. I'm not a big social media person, to be honest, but I'm trying.
Okay. No problem. Thank you so much. And we'll put those details also in the show notes. And to everybody else who's tuned in for today's episode, thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Root of the Science podcast with your girl, Anne with an E. Until next time, goodbye.